Welcome to Mid-American Money. I'm Ernie Goss, Professor of Economics and Director of the Economic Forecasting Group here at Creighton University. Today we're going to talk about the post-9/11, working and investing in the post-9/11 economy. Today I'm joined with my pugnacious pecuniary partner, Tony Hendrickson, the Dean of the College of Business Administration here at Creighton University. And likewise today, or I should say I'm joined also by Tim Bastian, who is an investment advisor with Manor Investment Advising Services, a prominent investing company that has a presence both local, regionally, and nationally. So very glad to have Tim here with us today. So first, let me review our findings from our survey of supply managers in 9 states for the month of August and what that survey told us. Now, this is a survey of businesses stretching from North Dakota and Minnesota in the north to Oklahoma, Arkansas in the south. First off, of the 800 businesses, this survey, the overall index, that's the leading economic indicator, declined for the 5th time in the past 6 months. So this is not a trend we want to continue to see, but it looks like what we're going to continue to see. The national number that came out analogous to our Creighton number was down and really tipping almost into recessionary territory, 50.9. The index ranges between 0 and 100, 50 being growth neutral, so very close to being in recession territory. A second factor, employment for the month of August declined, and that's certainly not good. Now that's for the region, and that was another indicator that this economy, even the regional economy in this part of the country, what we call the Mid-America region, is not doing that well. The business confidence index tumbled to lows we haven't seen since the recession. So we ask businesses to look out 6 months. What do you see? Not good. Back to recession levels. And finally, a weak economy is pushing down our imports. In other words, companies are finding that as a result of the slowing economy, they're not importing as much. So it was not a good report. So our current survey says the economy is teetering on a recession, not in a recession yet. But what should policymakers do to stimulate the U.S. economy? I'll ask, hey, Tim, what do you think?
Well, I'd like to see
or should they stimulate the economy?
One of the things I'd like to see is them to back off. It's what we're seeing. Just as the added regulation that we're seeing right now has been a real deterrent to business. I will tell you that as I survey some of my clients, I like to ask them how their businesses are doing. In Nebraska, they seem to be doing well, especially the ones that are tied to
back to the regional, doing better.
They seem to be doing really well. But what we're also seeing is I had lunch with a fellow today who does IT consulting. So he places IT professionals, and he said business is booming right now. So that's one of the things that's...
So
IT seems to be doing really well, and this is across a national business.
Okay.
But what's really interesting, though, is that it's really picked up, but it's picked up for project work. Okay. Not necessarily full-time work.
Not full-time, permanent
the projects,
jobs.
And that's going to hopefully be a precursor to some full-time employment. But one of the things we'd like to see the federal government do, especially on the business side, is that stop trying to help, and stop making employees more expensive.
Yeah,
that's been the big push right now.
So whatever you've been doing, it hasn't been helping.
So
quit doing it.
Exactly. I mean, there's got to be a Yogi Berra.
Okay, Tony, what do you think the federal government should be doing?
Go on vacation.
Oh my goodness!
I think
of course
I would agree with Tim. I think that the more they try to help, the worse they make it. There seems to be an underlying misconception amongst Washington politicians that they're smarter than the rest of us, that they know more about how to fix things than we do. If they would get out of the private sector and let the private sector operate and the free market operate, people would create jobs, businesses would create jobs. But everyone is so afraid of regulation, of the oversight, and the changes, because anytime that the government's involved, whatever the rules are today, tomorrow the rules will be different. And so businesses have decided to keep their cash, stay on the sideline.
Now, there's a lot of cash right now.
Okay,
well,
but
tons
now
of cash out there.
We're going to talk today about post 9/11. How has the economy and investing changed since 9/11?
It's much shorter term, and I think what you're seeing here is that there's a lack of commitment to long-term projects. That people are just saying, I don't know what the climate's going to be, therefore I'm going to sit out. And that's one of the worst things that you can ever hear about in the business climate, is that to have somebody say, let's wait and see. Because if you just wait and see, what's going to happen is things don't get done. Things get pushed back. Things get pared down.
So, Tim, Tony, are you buying gold? I mean, that's an
I
immediate.
I was going to say gold is really at an all-time high.
Okay.
And that's indicative of the lack of confidence. When people have confidence in the economy, when I trust that you and I are going to do business, that I'm going to provide you a good or service, and you're going to be able to pay me, and indeed, then you can buy a new house from Tim and invest it and do a number of different things. The economy is good. We don't need to own gold when the confidence is in our own economy and our confidence in one another to exchange goods and services. But when that confidence starts to fail, people go to a safe haven and say, I want to have gold.
You know what it's done for me is, believe it or not, I've moved more into international. Now I don't buy individual international stocks. I buy what I buy is the Vanguard International Growth, Vanguard International Value, other Vanguard International funds.
So, Ernie, is that because you feel that the opportunities in business, the business opportunities globally, are outstripping the opportunities in the U.S.?
Absolutely. That's one of the factors, Tony, of course. I think so. Also, I think we're just a big target right now. I mean, I don't mean, not necessarily in the 9/11 sense, but a target in terms of military action, having to expend more and more of our resources in Afghanistan, in Iraq, or where, Libya, and that saps to some degree our economy. So I'm more confident about what's going on in some of the international companies.
A classic, from an economic standpoint, a classic guns and butter argument that we're having to put our resources into guns instead of butter.
To some degree. Unfortunately, we're not putting it in, even on the butter side, we're not doing the right butter, if you will.
Well, it's bad for you. The government's told us that.
Yeah, that tax incentives.
Tim, one of the things that we saw back in the 90s when we fought the first Gulf War is that we fought that war out of inventory. And what that I mean by that is that I actually was an Air Force officer at the time. We fought that out of stuff that we already had built during the Reagan build-up years. And now we were able to do that starting in 2001 for about 2 years. We still had a lot of inventory left over. But then, since then, probably 2004 or so, we really had to start to buy more stuff, and that's where it's been a bit of a drag on the economy. I do think a lot of times people get confused about when they talk about military spending, is they think that there's been a certain amount that's been spent in Iraq or in Afghanistan. A lot of that would have already been spent.
Yeah, exactly.
It would have already been spent
it's
because
not like
they would have been stateside.
You bring them home, you're going to spend it. You bring them home, you're going to spend it still.
There certainly has been a significant incremental cost, but this is the first time for a long time that we've been not fighting out of inventory, though, for the last about the last 5 to 6 years. So that's had a detrimental effect as far as deficit goes.
Well, if you look at this, Tony, you've been a big bull on energy. During the 90s, a lot of what was driving the economy, and the reason we made a heck of a lot of money and our GDP was growing at a very solid pace, was oil prices were low. Now we're in high oil prices. You are in this post 9/11 economy? How do you see?
I'm still bullish on energy. Because
so you see energy prices continue to be high.
Yes, and I think that there's always going to be more demand, at least in the short run that I can see. After 30 years, we don't know, but I mean, in the next 5 to 10 years, it appears that there's going to be more demand for energy than our ability to supply it.
And which means, of course, certain states in the U.S. will do better than others. North Dakota and Wyoming and Oklahoma better than they're in our surveys. And some companies, perhaps like Exxon, like Conoco, I know.
Well, just for instance, too, one of the things that's out there right now is this Marcellus oil shale and also natural gas, and it stretches from New York into Pennsylvania and West Virginia. I grew up in Western New York. The economy there for the last 25 years has been depressed. Okay. Not even just recession, but depressed.
Right.
So we're talking about places like Rochester, New York, and across the southern tier. With that project that would be there, with oil, especially with the natural gas finds, that would rejuvenate New York State. But we've got a lot of regulations and a lot of different people getting in the way of that because for environmental concerns. And what we would be able to see is we'd see a huge amount of job growth in central New York, which desperately needs it. Central and western New York. Pennsylvania right now, where I've lived there for quite some time too, has the oldest population in the United States, I think, outside of Florida. So they're having this tremendous drain and brain drain out of the both states because there aren't the
so
jobs
we need
there.
a relaxation.
Absolutely.
We need to allow drilling
yeah, and we see that close to home too with the pipeline that we're
pipeline.
It's time to create some of these jobs. And a lot
but
of
if you do that though, that would tend to not depress, but diminish the growth in oil and natural gas.
Sure,
prices.
well, wouldn't it be great?
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't it be great? Right.
Like I indicated earlier, high oil prices restrain U.S. growth.
It's a tax.
Right, absolutely.
It taxes people with the lowest incomes as well. I mean, it's a very regressive. What do we like to see here is in the United States is that Ernie, you've talked a lot about wherever you have a comparative advantage, you should do it. If it's easy for you to do that, that's what you should be doing. And in the United States, we've restricted and we've put limits on our ability to do things that we do well, and one of them is doing energy. Okay, but what we've done is we've really put shackles on our energy industry here, and there are so many opportunities for us to be an energy player. But it's not so much that we'll talk later about trying to be energy independent because I always
That's post 9/11.
Sure. But again, we just need to be able to do energy production here because most of that will stay here. But see, a lot of times people don't realize that Japan gets a lot of its oil not from the Middle East but from the United States. So as a fungible asset,
we get it from Canada.
Exactly. As a fungible asset, it's going to find the cheapest route. But if we can be a producer and we can be a player in it, we should.
Okay. Perhaps what we're trying to be is entrepreneurial and develop a new line of business. Government regulation, so we can become the world's best at government
That's good economists.
Then we can rule the world.
Hey, it's a full
competitive advantage.
Full Employment Act for economists. You got no child left behind. This is no economist left behind.
We could